Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you meet with poker? How did you join poker? Like, tell us your story.
Okay, so my name is Dario. I'm like 29. I actually just became 29 a few days ago. And I started poker around 2020 at the end. Um, my background before poker, I think that's interesting. Um, I used to be almost professional League of Legends player. So I even had a contract at some point that I rejected. And I used to play with someone that's good, that's big in the community, the Spanish community at least, called Danny.
Uh-huh.
He used to play party poker in the 50s, 500s, everything. And
And he was a League
at
of
some point,
Legends. Sorry, he was a League of Legends as well. Yeah, player.
yeah, he used to
Yeah.
play with me. We played, for those that have played, we played bot lane duo, and we were really good at some point. And he transitioned to poker while I was studying in college. He dropped college like after 1 year or something, and then I kept studying for a few years, and eventually I dropped out as well. And when I did, he was like, "Look, I've been playing poker for the past years, and I'm doing really good for myself." He said, "What if I teach you? Because I mean, you have a lot of talent for video games as well." And he was starting his own school at the time, stable. So I said, okay, why not? So I started playing, I think, end of 2020, and I think in 2 or 3 months he was teaching me maybe like sometimes just he said start playing and see how it feels if you like it, and maybe like once a week or something he would give me like 30 minutes of railing or coaching, and eventually in a couple months I think I beat 0.25s and ones, and I was at twos. And he was like, okay, why don't you come to live with me? Because he had been outside of Spain for a few years and he was missing his friends. And he said, what if you come to live with me in Georgia, and which is in the south of Russia, for those that don't know. And I can teach you here live. You can see how I play. I can coach you in person. We can like do like a small boot camp for a few months, and then you can actually like go to high stakes quick. So I went there with a few friends, and I think in 2 or 3 months living with Danny, I actually wasted the opportunity because I spent very few hours playing. Um, but still, I had him next to me, and he was solving many questions. So I grew really fast.
You
I think I
mean
was playing
you
tens in
wasted?
like, yeah.
Maybe you played a few hours per day, or you mean altogether you played like few hours where you stayed when you stayed together?
So usually when I started playing poker, I was not grinding at all. I think I was grinding maybe like 20 hours a month or something, because at the time I was not sure I actually wanted to play poker. So what I did was maybe I played, I don't know, maybe 1 hour a day or something, which
I
was a
see.
lot to me at the time. And maybe I studied with him. He sent me some videos from his school. And I studied maybe 10, 20 hours a month too. So not a lot. I started slow. And when I moved with him, I said, okay, I'm going to start doing more. But more to me at the time was like 3 hours a day, maybe, in total. So yeah, I didn't really use him that much, and I should have. But anyway, I still moved to like tens in 2 more months, I think. So I had been playing for like 4 months or something. I was already playing tens. I was doing, good for myself. And then because of some family issues that I had to take a break from poker for 1 year actually. And by the time I came back to poker in at the end of 2022, I think, if I'm not wrong, Danny had sold his school to Team 651 with Jackstack. And so I started with them, and I said, okay, I've been in a break for 1 year. And then Jackstack actually talked with me and said, if I were you, what I would do is focus like 1 month in just studying to have like a good mindset again before you start. And then let's see what happens. So I did that actually. I started playing after 1 month of studying. That month I actually went crazy with the studying. I think I put like 150 hours or something like that, which is to this day probably my record of studying. And when I came back, I actually had like insane results compared to when I left. So after 1 year of not playing at all, I just studied for 1 month, and I don't know, I was doing crazy results. I think I was number one in the pool for a couple months.
Okay.
And there were Russian players at the time in Spain, by the way, that they had no reg back, but the field was so soft that they were doing like 80 chips or something like that. And I think I was doing like over 100 at that time, or like 100, something
And
like that.
what stakes you were playing? Oh,
I was playing tens.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So maybe I had played, at the time, I had played probably like 5,000 games total in my life because I never grinded. So 1 year
Okay.
playing poker, and I actually had not played at all. But I had studied maybe 200 something hours, and I was beating tens already.
And
All
how did
thanks
you
to,
study?
yeah,
Could you describe how did you study?
yeah. So actually, I was guided by Danny since I
Uh-huh.
started. I had not played poker ever before, never. Literally in my life, I had not touched a card. I didn't know the rules or anything when he started teaching me. So I think that's a good thing because I had no previous conditioning to fish stuff. And the way I studied is actually what he told me. I would just watch theory and then apply what I learned in the theory in my next session, and always focusing on improving. And I didn't care about results at all. So because they didn't mean any money or anything at the time, it was low stakes. So I was just focusing on doing the right thing. And then I had doubts, and whenever I had a doubt, I would ask him. So maybe I would accumulate like hands that I didn't know how to play, and then I would send them to him, and he would just be like, "Okay, here I would do this, here I would do that," and that's how I learned basically. He was teaching in the school at the time. I would watch maybe like 1 hour a day of classes or something like that. Then before I actually went to my grinding sessions, which were very like I said, few and for a few hours, I would watch live plays usually. I think it helped me get into that thinking process of the coaches instead of mine, which was worse. And I think it helped. So that's it. I did that for like, I don't know, not that long, and I was beating tens. I actually moved to 25s really quick, and I think the field was very soft, still is probably in Spain compared to .com, but I actually was studying with other people sometimes, and they were struggling a lot, and I think most of it had to do with the fact that they were not studying enough, and also mental. So I had a good mental because coming from League of Legends, which will test your mental game every single game, and that game is toxic and people are screaming at each other, and poker to me was like a piece of cake in the beginning compared to that. And so I really never tilted or anything. I was always focusing on improving. I think that's really what gave me the edge, I think, in the beginning. So yeah,
Uh,
I think.
so do
Yeah,
you,
go ahead.
so in your opinion, poker community is way less toxic than League of Legends community? Because I personally, what do you think?
It's not even 1% of what League of Legends is. Yeah, basically. So people in League of Legends, it's a team game, right?
Yeah.
And because you can screw their game, they will insult you and make you know that you did it, and they're very, let's say, they're very vocal about it. Yeah. And I thank God there was not a voice chat in there, because that would be insane, actually. The Counter Strike, for those people in Russia play a lot of Counter Strike, I think.
Yeah.
People are very toxic there as well in the microphone. League of Legends is like 10 times more toxic than that, if you can, compare it. So especially in EU West.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I had a good mental. I mean, I'm a smart person, I think, in general. And Danny was helping me which was amazing. And at some point when I think I beat tens, I moved to 25s with Team 651. And I think January 2023, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit earlier, I made a study group, which pushed everything much farther. So I made a group in Team 651 Spain, and I told them that I wanted to study with more people instead of focusing on studying so much, by myself, because I wanted more like, I was too conditioned to how Danny thought. Okay, so basically, I had never learned from anyone else. I only studied by myself, so I didn't have this part of poker that I think is actually beautiful, which is having different points of view of the same hand. I always had the same point of view. It's mine and Danny, and we think the same because he taught me. So I started sharing with other people, and that actually opened my mind a lot on how other decks played. And I think I moved from being maybe having that too, how would I say it? My strategy was not very flexible. It was inflexible. When I started studying with other people and I started seeing how they think, I became much more flexible in tables as well. And yeah, I think from there I moved to 25. I beat it immediately. Then I changed it to flashes for a few months. Then I beat that as well. And I think I started iPoker March 2023. I moved to 50s in like 1 month because I already had really good results. I think my kickstart intense was so good that I already had the skill to play almost 50s, honestly. And I think, yeah, 2023, I think April, something like that, I started 50s. And I started playing different lobbies. I moved to Italy for 1 month, which was a huge mistake because I started thinking, okay, how can I improve my hourly? So I started looking at trends in the pool, and I started saying, okay, French people have more chips, Italian people have more chips. What if I move to Italy? What if I move to France? What if I start playing their lobbies? And then I think the pool is a liar in some ways because you don't see how much traffic there is. You don't see if there are limitations with right back or how many tables you can play. I think in Italy you were limited to like 4 tables or something like that, and traffic was terrible. So I wasted like 2 months there trying to play, and I actually lost a lot of money because of that, or rather money that I would have made if I had stayed in Spain.
Okay.
And yeah, it was all like a learning process to see like where to play, how many hours to play. And I started realizing that my biggest flaw was I was really good at studying. Okay, I was studying all day, every day, 2023. I had this group of people that were like calling me. Like one guy was calling me, "Hey, let's study 2 hours. Let's rail me, please. Let's do a live play together." And maybe I was studying like 6, 7 hours a day easily, all 2023. And at some point, I realized I was probably like the most how would I say it, imbalanced person in the world between grinding and studying because I was studying all day. Maybe I was grinding 1 hour a day. Okay, so I was grinding 2,000 games a month, 1,500, something like that, and I was studying all day. So I hired a mental coach that specializes in people that work in the Olympics. Okay.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
cool. I've
Yeah.
al-
Yeah.
I've,
Yeah.
al- I've
Really cool.
always I've always tried to find a mental coach, but the guys who I found would cost like $500 per session or something ridiculous like that.
Ah,
And
yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, this is like my mental game was good, but I always wondered what if I worked with someone who studied like for Olympics, like you said, like studies the champion, like helps the champions to become like to become the
Yeah.
best, right? Okay, this is very interesting. So tell us, how much did it cost, first of
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. It was not very expensive. So he's from Argentina. So salaries in Argentina are super low in general. Maybe a psychologist is making 20 an hour, 10 an hour. It depends.
Okay,
And so this guy was making, I think, 60 an hour at the time. Yeah.
which
So
is for
60 an hour for them is a lot of money. But for me in Spain, that's like average psychology, right? So it was not very expensive. And he used to be a tennis player and he was amateur. He was like semi-professional.
yeah.
And eventually he was in the biggest club in Argentina, I think. And when he studied psychology, some of his old friends from the club that actually made it to like Wimbledon and the Olympics and all that were like, hey, why don't you specialize in this and actually help us? And he said, yeah, sure. So he started just doing these mental sessions with people that were like super high level in tennis. Then eventually, I think he did MBA for a little bit for Spanish speakers and some Olympics. So he started getting interested in poker. I don't know why. I don't remember the story, but I was told about him, and I said, okay, sure, this sounds amazing. So I started with him at the end of 2023, like 1 year ago, and yeah, it was a game changer for me because I always wanted to be one of those like super crashers that play a lot of games as well and make like 20K a month or 50K a month or whatever. But I was not making that much money because I was not playing a lot, and this was like my big mental barrier to break. So he helped me understand why, and I had a lot of insecurities about my game, and usually I was used to like very high quality, right? So I felt that after playing for a couple hours, I would start losing quality, and I didn't want like other regs to think that I was not playing perfect or super good, and which is stupid because we all make mistakes, but it was a big thing for me. So I started playing, and after 1 hour, I was like, okay, I'm not playing my super like A+ game anymore, so I will just stop. And I always found excuses not to grind, and he helped me break that. And actually, I became a good grinder by I think like January 2024, like this year. Actually, I started grinding a lot, and thanks to him, I broke a lot of like mental barriers. I never had any problems with like tilt or any most of the common mental issues, but I knew I had big mental leaks somewhere else. I just couldn't find where, and he helped me like find them and fix them. And I think probably, I think I did like a 3 or 4x of my salary since I started with him in like 4 or 5 months. And of course, I was already in that path, to move towards that change. But he helped me make it like 10 times faster. So I think maybe every $60 I paid to him, maybe like 1,000 were coming back in value. Honestly, like that's how it felt.
Have you ever tried? Meditation? By the way.
Yeah.
And
so usually, it works well for like mental clarity, and actually, I think it helps with longer sessions. I feel like I'm focused for longer, which is good, but I think most of my issues came from somewhere else, like insecurities and basically insecurities. Like what will other people think of me, right? Like that kind of thing. And I was always very anxious playing because whenever I had a doubt, I was too scared to make a mistake, so I played too safe in the tables.
I see.
I mean, it has a good side to it. So the good thing about doing that is that you don't blunder that often, so you don't make huge mistakes. And I think that's one of the biggest leaks of like mid-stakes players, right? They are good players, but they make not a lot, but many like big mistakes, and that's actually what hurts the win rate at the end of the month. And I usually played it super safe, which I lost EV on, but also I didn't make blunders. So I think at the end of the day, it kind of made me a more solid player when I was starting. But then I had to work a lot to break this like safety mindset and becoming aggressive. That was a lot of work. And I actually did this in 2024. And I was tagging 50s for over a year. I think this is what actually pushed me to 100s. I was a big loser on red line. Like my red line was like always going down. And I think this year I actually managed to break even first in like March or something. And now I'm actually winning with the red line. And it took so many coaching sessions from you and from the mental coach and a lot of introspection. I actually think meditation helped with that as well. I was not that scared to make blunders and lose money. And
yeah. Okay.
So this was basically it. If you want to talk about traveling, which I think is something cool for people that are now in mistakes. And
we could talk a little bit about poker. Like first of all, about insecurities, because I've met enough of high rollers. Like in my head, like high rollers are split into 2 categories. So first type of high rollers are the guys who are just insanely talented. They just like, and you could see like how different people are really on like the IQ spectrum, because I've met some people who had extremely poor work ethics. Like they played drunk, they didn't study, they just like they did the opposite of what you did, and they had insane results, like insane. And then I would not name any nicknames, but I had like a mental idea, like this guy, he's perfect. Like he wakes up at 6 a.m., like cold shower, goes to the gym, then studies for 2 hours, then opens up a session, and he's like laser focused. And the guy who I saw was so different from what I expected that it blew my head. And then I met a lot of guys who did all those things, and they played like 5s or 10s. They played like the lowest limits, and they were like super concentrated on anything. And the guys who like didn't care at all, and they had insane results. So like, I think they, like in poker, spins specifically, I don't think you need to be very smart to be high stakes player in spin and goes, because spins, it's more about grind. And it's more about like learning basic patterns and, memorizing them basically, because you could just memorize a bunch of shit and memorize like the basic strategies. And then you just need to play a long session without making big blunders. And you're going to show good results. Like that's okay. Yeah. Like if you're playing, because spin and goes are not that hard. Of course, there are going to be some tough spots, but like 95% of the spots, you could get a very good idea of how to play them. So it's just like, if you're going to learn a ton, for me, for example, I had the very opposite path of you. So I think in English community, a lot of people might not know my story, but I was like for about 2-3 years, I was like a fish. So I couldn't beat the game for first 2 years. Yeah, so it's not like I started playing poker and then I was immediately very good. I was actually very bad. One of the stories I like to tell that, for example, I would play live and, for example, I would take a note of flops which opened. And I would, for example, sometimes open from the UTG Queen 7 offsuit, thinking that, well, on 5 flops in a row, there were no queen. So on the 6th flop, the chances that the queen would hit is higher, so I need to open Queen 7 offsuit now. So, like, very, very bad. Very bad logic, yeah. And then I started, playing, I think I started playing cash like 5 cents, 10 cents. And I couldn't beat it. Like the game was. So, yeah. So for me, it was the tough path, basically. I think one of the reasons why I'm a good teacher, because I'm extremely dumb and I could explain it for dumb people like me. Because for me, it took a lot of grind. Like it was very, very long. I would beat like $7 spin and goes heads up. Then I would beat 15. Then I would move down to 7. Then I would move down to 15. Then I 30. Like it was a very, very, very hard grind. Also, I remember when I was playing $30 heads up sit and goes, I didn't know anything about cartels, and I didn't know that you could have like a Skype group or Discord group, and you could say like I'm in, or there were like back then there were like special programs which would make sure that you don't play against one another, right? So I remember how was it called? Poker Shark, it doesn't matter. Like the special program which doesn't suit you all together. So I would fight for the lobby. Then I would get the lobby. Then I would sit out on purpose because there was no action. I just wanted to play. I didn't care with whom. So somebody sits in and then I would sit him, like I would.
It's the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yes. It was the opposite. And I played like this for like a couple of months. And then somebody like explained to me that, you could not play against other players. I'm like, wow, really? Like I could avoid playing versus stuff Rex. That's insane. Like I didn't know you could do that. So basically, I hit, every obstacle you can imagine. And then, I remember I had one really, really good coaching lesson with Oxota. I don't know if you know him, Daniel Dvores. He's like an MTT player. And I remember we were and my strategy would back then be just to close to c-bet 100%. Every board, because and I would explain it like people are overfolding, so c-bet is good. And he would tell me like, well, yes, they overfold on the flop, but it doesn't mean that the c-bet is good, because you have to compare it with the EV of other actions. So for example, if he folds on the flop 50%, if you check back and you delay the turn, and he folds on the turn 70%, well, then delay turn is even better than c-betting the flop, regardless of him, overfolding the flop, because VV is relative. And this third, again, I was making at this point money somehow, but it never occurred to me that you could compare different EVs. I would just play kind of intuitive back then. And then I figured out that it just blew my mind to the possibilities of all the different lines you could take. And after that, it improved my game. But then, so basically I was a very, 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 very bad player for a long time, or like mediocre player, so to speak. And then solvers come in. And solvers for me was like a breath of fresh air, because you could just grind this shit down. Like you could just, if you just grind for 8-10 hours, it doesn't matter how bad you are. These are spin and goes. You could just memorize a lot of stuff and you could learn a lot of stuff the hard way. What do you think reason of red line swapped with green, red high, green zero? I don't think it matters. Like red line, blue line, it doesn't matter too much. Like for spin and goes, for low stakes, your red line should be high because people are overfolding a lot, so you should play more aggressively. But at a higher stake, it doesn't matter too much. Like versus fish, of course. Like if you look at the stats of fish are actually winning with blue line. Like if you look at fish at high stakes, fish has and you look at their graph, their blue line is above the zero, and their red line goes like this, like it just goes down, 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 down. Because fish are the most common mistake of fish, they're overfolding both pre-flop and post-flop. So your red line should be extremely high versus fish, but versus Rex, it depends on your style. Like on low stakes, you should be winning with red line because, but again, it doesn't matter, but I think the optimal strategy would be for you to be winning with red line. At high stakes, again, it doesn't matter. Like right now, my red line is a little bit above zero, but it's like it depends on what Rex you're facing, basically. It's okay.
Yeah, I think in low stakes, the optimal strategy is winning with red line, but I've seen people with like opposite graphs, like one that only wins with red and then one that only wins with blue, and both are crashing the stake. So I think different strategies have their merit. You can be like, if you are a very passive person by nature, like me, I think losing with red line in the beginning makes sense and it's okay. I don't think fighting against your nature makes sense in the beginning.
Okay.
Eventually, you will have to when you learn more, because that's optimal, and you will have to perfect your game. But in the beginning, I think you also have to learn to accept how you behave in general. I think going against yourself probably not the best decision. Like even if you study how to be aggressive for a very long time, you're never going to be as aggressive as the person that is naturally aggressive. That's my thought anyway about that.
I don't know. Like again, I agree that it's difficult to fight against your nature. That if you're very passive, but like if you, for example, for me, I'm very passive as well. So my most common mistakes were that I prefer to bluff very cheap. I was afraid of huge bluffs, especially when you're making expensive bluffs into uncapped range. I was afraid of making, like loose calls, because like when you're making a call, you're mostly losing, but the pots which you're winning are bigger. So I was afraid of everything like this. But then I would make an experiment there. I would say to myself that okay, I have enough money that I can make an experience for 1 month where I would not check my graph and I would just call insanely wide. I would just call insanely wide and see how I go. And the funny thing is that I was calling for 1 month as loose. Like every time I was thinking about it, I would call. Like I would call as loose as I can, basically. In my head, I was never folding. Yeah. And then I would check my graph and it would say I'm still overfolding. Like that's not loose enough. I would need to call even looser. Like GTO is calling even looser than that, which is kind of shows you that in your head, like you have a mental picture about your game and you have real game, right? And you have a selective memory because the pots which you lose, for me, I mean, for different people, it's different, right? But for most people, I think the pots which you lose, you remember better than the pots which you win, I think. So you kind of feel this feeling that in some spots you call and you always beat, which is not true because of a selective memory. Like if you have the machine, the heart, right, which calculates all this, you will see that you're actually winning. And when I saw, yeah, I'm actually winning by calling, but then it was so difficult because I always felt that I could not call even wider than that. And then it would be like, I would call wider, like each month it would be 1% wider, 1% wider, it was like moving very slow. With bluffs, it was easier. Yeah.
I actually did one exercise with my mental coach at some point and with a friend where we were taking notes on how well we thought we did every session. So like, let's say this month we start day one, we finish the session and we are like, okay, so we played 200 games. We feel like we had around 40 chips, for example, right? Day two, 12 chips, whatever, right? So at the end of the month, we checked how we both felt. And it was like, I don't know, minus 20 or 30 chips, like compared to what we actually did. And it's because I think it's what you're talking about, selective memory. It's like you don't really remember that much the pots that you win, especially the small pots. But every time you get a cooler, for example, or that you try to bluff catch and you fail and you lose the pot, you remember that. So every time I finished my sessions, my feeling was that I had done very poorly. Like my run was terrible. That was part of the reason why I was not grinding that much, right? If you every time you grind, you feel bad that you're running bad and they're beating you, even though it's not true and you can see it in the graph, but you feel like that, you don't want to keep grinding. Yeah,
Yeah, of
that
course.
was one of the things that I worked with my mental coach, and I think most people in the community have like terrible perspective on how well they're doing, how they treat some spots. They're like, no, this spot is never bluffed, and it's like super
Yeah.
over bluffed, and it's
Yes.
because maybe 3 times they called and they lost in their life, and they have this memory of that spot, and that's not really how it works at all. So yeah, I understand you. I was like that before.
This is actually like I would ask most of my students. I would ask them like, how do you think you're playing these sports? You know, yeah, and most people would have a very bad idea of even their game, like because it's one thing where you're over bluffing, but you're aware that you're over bluffing. Like you're making a mistake on purpose to counter your opponent's even bigger mistake, right? So it's not a mistake, it's an adjustment. You know that you're doing that and you're aware of it. But it's and if you see that it's not working, you can counter adjust and you can change your game. But if you are over bluffing, but you think that you're under bluffing, then you cannot change your game because the map and the reality, you know, they're too different. So you have to always. That's why it's very important to check your actual stats and to see your bluff to value ratio to actually see how you're actually doing, because it's impossible to guess whether you're bluffing enough or not, whether you're calling enough or not, just based on your feeling. It's impossible, basically, because again, you have a very, very, very selective memory. And I'm yet to meet a person who had a clear picture of his game, who actually would say, I'm over bluffing here, I'm under bluffing here, and was correct about all the spots. Like I've never met a person who would do that. Like everybody had this spot where he thought he's over bluffing insanely, but the reality was he's under bluffing. Like the guys, very common was that the guy would say like, oh, what is your biggest mistake? And they would say, I call to lose. Like, you know, like I make a bunch of dumb calls, and they're like the biggest needs I've seen. They're just insanely needy. It's just insane. It's, by the way, a little cheat for the guys. When I studied fish, I would the surprising discovery for me was that post flop, like the logical thing would be that the fish who have the loosest range pre-flop would have the biggest overfold post-flop because their range is very weak, right? They get a lot of weak hands in, so they're gonna be very, 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 they would have a lot of overfold post-flop. And the guy who had the neatiest range pre-flop would have the least amount of folds post-flop because their range is very strong. But the reality, it's the opposite. The guys who play very loose pre-flop, so they have like 80% of hands from the button, they never fold. They're insanely sticky post flop. And the guys who are playing like heads up, they're playing 50% from the small blind. Heads up. So like you should play like 95, they play 50. And they have the biggest overfold post flop. You know, they fold the pair on the flop immediately. So yeah, it's again, so the guys who the fact that they are not aware of how strong their range is ridiculous. Like how different the game. Like the guys who are very loose pre-flop, they think every hand is good. They always see some type of backdoor. They always see some, you know, they always could find some bluffs in your range. And yeah, the neatiest guys are very needy post-flop. Like again, the guys who are overfolding on the flop the most, you would think he folded on the flop so much that by the river, by the turn, their range is basically top pair plus, right? So he never folds. But the guys who have the biggest overfold on the flop, they would have the biggest overfold on the turn and the biggest overfold on the river. So yeah. It's like the opposite of what you would think. And the guy who are very loose, they just call you down with fat pair basically. They just never fold. So
I think it's a personality thing too, like what I was talking about earlier. Like if you're aggro, and if you're neat, basically. But for fish, they never develop past that because they don't learn.
yeah.
So neat is a neat. You have to tag them as that, and they will overfold even if they're, they have the crazy range, because they hit more or less the same amount of times. Yeah, when they hit stronger, but when they don't hit, they instantly fold. And the other people, they have like one backdoor or one overcard, and they're like call. So basically, yeah, it's a personality thing, and I think you were talking about intuition and all that. I think there's merit to that as well. I think some people, so Dave, like Monkey,
Yeah.
there's some people that they naturally learn the game just based on intuition. Of course, they're going to be making mistakes because intuition is not perfect. But I think following your intuition, and this is one thing that he taught Danny, that Danny taught me, because Monkey was Danny's mentor before Danny taught me, is follow your instinct when you have doubts. Like if you have doubts and you think it's close between two possibilities, just follow your instinct. Because I think the subconscious, some people actually shouldn't follow it because they're terrible at it.
Yeah.
But if you think your instinct is good, follow it, because I mean the brain is a machine, right? And it's working on a subconscious level. And even if you don't know a spot or you don't remember, sometimes the brain is going to like yell at you, from there and be like, fold here, please. You've seen this so many times. You don't remember it, but you have, suffered this spot so many times, and you should fold. So I think before you're strong and you know how to play and you have learned where you're making mistakes, following your instinct could be good, I think. I think that actually helped me a lot at some point in my life. And then I had to, break it again and start going against my instinct, which was too neat. And then I actually did even better.
My
Mental game is very long.
My intuition was always terrible. Like my intuition was always, and it was actually very freeing. Like it was easy, like to embrace solver, that I would just follow the strategy and see how it goes. And very often I know he tells me that's a call, and calling in some sports for me was like you see there is like a blade in front of your eyes and you need to make a step forward, and you're like, well, if I make a step forward I'm gonna lose my eyesight. Like it was like making this call was like I knew it that it was a bad call. And the fact of the matter is that most of the time that you make this call you lose, and you're like, I knew it.
Yes.
I knew it. And it's like getting punched in the face repeatedly. And you just keep doing it. And
it's still EV plus, so you have to keep doing it.
Yes, you're kind of like, in this spot, I mostly lose. Like, he represents his hand, and I'm gonna see it very likely, and I have to keep calling again and again and again. You have to be very confident in your game to keep doing it, and be grinding a lot. I heard that it's easier to make good player from active aggro player than a neat player. Yes, exactly. Yeah, because the active player is trying. He's trying to figure something out. He's trying to find a very creative way to win. And the neat player is just scared. And the guy who's scared, who doesn't have this killer instinct that he sees the pots and he tries to fight for it, it's very hard, it's very hard to find this instinct, basically. This is absolutely the case. Could you tell me a little bit about the League of Legends? So you were offered a contract, yes? At some point.
Yeah. So the same thing with poker happened. Actually, I was against my family's will. They wanted me to study in college, obviously, and follow the traditional path and whatnot. And they didn't like me playing video games so much. And it got to the point where I was playing so many hours, and I was so good. I was studying that I think I was probably like top 10 in Spain, probably something like that in ELO. Maybe like top 20 or something, I don't remember. But yeah, some team was like, hey, you're good, you've played some tournaments, you've won, you're doing good in ladders, so why don't you come with us? Contracts back then were not very good, like they didn't pay that much money. So I was very excited to accept it. And I went to my parents and was like, hey, I will accept this. I'm very happy. I finally, it's my dream. And they were like, my father at the time was like, if you accept the contract, you will have no future help from me in anything in life, economically or nothing else. Because it was not very fair from him, but he had like worked really hard to give me a good life and good economy and possibilities with college and all that. And so he felt that I was betraying him, and I had to work with a lot with my psychologist about this. But eventually I had to say no to the contract, because even though it gave me enough money to survive, I was too young. I think I was 17 at the time. And, I think emancipating from your parents at 17 to do something that you're not sure how it's going to do, I was not brave enough to do it, actually. So I had to reject it and stay under my father's wing for a few more years. But then eventually I realized what was obvious to me, and it was that I didn't want to go to college, and I started poker maybe like 3 or 4 years later. And yeah, that was basically it. I was naturally good at League of Legends. No, probably no. I spent like too many hours. I'm embarrassed to say it, but probably like 15,000 hours or something in like 5 years or 6 years. I was playing all day, every day, and that's why I was good. And same for Danny, probably. And I think I don't regret saying no to League of Legends, because it's the opposite of poker, right? In poker, most people, even if they have no talent and they don't work hard, they can still make some money just playing low stakes, right?
Yes.
They can play 2s or 5s, and they can make money being really, really terrible at the game. You just have to beat fish, which are even worse than you. In League of Legends, though, only a few percentage of players actually make a living wage, and it's super competitive. There are only regs. If you think about it, when you start a game of 10 people, there's 10 regs, and there's no reg, but you have to be on average better than all the regs in your skill level to go higher. And they're mostly people without jobs playing 12 hours a day and grinding like crazy and studying and obsessed with the game. So yeah, I think it would have been too tough on me. And so I think I made a good decision not going that route, even though I really liked it. I think, I think I did I also shouldn't have gone to college, but it was nice doing the traditional path and finding it was actually not for me. I thought that it wasn't, but I actually, proved it by going and not liking it.
Yeah.
And now with poker, I think poker is a really nice balance of something that I don't love, because I don't think I love poker, but I don't hate it either. I think it's okay, and I love studying, actually. I don't like playing, but I like studying. So, I just do the bare minimum that I think is, good to make a good salary and, have good performance. So maybe someone was asking earlier how many hours per month I was grinding. I think I'm grinding this year on average, not that much, maybe 100 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours, something like this. I'm playing a lot of tables. I was playing 9 tables, most of it. And so yeah, maybe you finish the month and you have like, I don't know, like 6,000 games, something like this, right? It's a decent volume, right? How many games do people think they can play without losing quality? Because for me, I found out that after so many hours, my quality decreases so much, and the win rates are so tight that I start not being so profitable. And I think it makes more sense to focus that off time in working your mental, studying, actually like things like going to the gym. I think those are most important when you are playing high stakes already. But I think grinding twice as much for maybe like a 30% increased salary is not worth it. You get burnout, you don't improve as fast, I think. And yeah, I think this is my sweet spot, like 80 to 100 hours a month, and then studying around the same, maybe like 50 hours, 80 hours, something like this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hours at the end of the month, but I spend half of it studying, which I like. Like, to me, if Philip and me go into a conversation like this and we start, watching hands, going to GTOs, I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Because there is no stress, right? Because you can for me, it was the same. Like because I used to convince myself that because I would play very low volume and I would also study obsessively, especially when I actually get good at the game and I would go get to high stakes and I would just like study whenever. Like I had at some point I had no hobbies. I would either play poker, I would study poker. That's all I did. And I would study, like I would play 3 hours per day and I would study for like, you know, like 9 hours. So I would just like every little thing I wanted to, because when I made mistakes, I would punish myself for them. I would like hit myself in the head. I would be very angry at myself. I had this problem. And when people ask me why I studied so much, I would lie to them and I would lie to myself, because the answer would be that, well, the game is too boring, it's not interesting, it's not challenging enough, like I'm not learning everything new. I would prefer, because when it's studied, it's like it's difficult, it's refreshing, it's interesting, something like this. It was a lie. The reason is that the game gave me a lot of stress. Basically, like if I had a lot of session, I would have an insomnia. Like if I had a really bad session, I would not be able to sleep for like, you know, or I would sleep for 2 hours. And there was some weeks where I would sleep for 4 hours a day, you know, because I would be very angry at myself. I would be thinking that, okay, so because remember, it's not, I had, some people would say that I'm like this genius level player, but I knew myself and I didn't had like your success at poker at the beginning. I would be, it was very, 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 very hard for me. And I knew that I'm in this place only because I worked insane hours, like insane hours, right? So, to be where I was. And I was very scared of losing it. So, but meditation for me was a big key. Like meditation really, really, really helped a lot, because then I would no longer feel stress at the game. There was one funny time when like there was, I think I talked about this, but like when I played like my first jackpot, I played without pool for a very long time. Like I played without pool because I don't know, like I found it interesting. I had a little gamble in me there. I would, you know, enjoy the big multipliers and stuff like this. And I had my first jackpot and I would be insanely needy. You know, I would be very, 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 very tight. And then I, you know, promised myself that the next time I hit the jackpot, I would just play ridiculously bad and it would like emancipate myself. I would free myself, yeah? And then I would hit, I think jackpot, it was for 200k. And like, 400k. And like, the first hand, like, he limped. I have quintus off, so 25 big blinds. I jam all in. Like, I just didn't care. I would go insanely aggressive. And I would win this. And after that, I just, it was, combining with meditation, when I didn't feel pressure and I would not check my graph also during the month. I would never look at my graph, because if I had good results, it would not affect me. I would like, yeah, of course I have good results. But if I have bad results, it would affect me very negatively. So I still never check my results. And if I had a bad month, I would just look at my graph during like the entire year or like the entire 2 years. Like, and I would see that my line is going forward. And when I actually didn't feel that much stress playing poker, like right now, I still feel stress, but not as much as I felt before. Because before, it was crushing me. Like when I was playing badly, or when my opponents would outplay me, I would take it personal, you know, I would like feel real emotions. It was like I'm during the war and I'm surrounded by people who are trying to kill me, you know, like, like something like this. Yeah, you know this feeling.
No, I understand it. Yeah. I was very similar to you in that aspect. My mental was good in general, I think, but I was so scared of doing something embarrassing on the tables.
Yes.
The pressure I put on myself to perform is so high. The expectations were really high of me, because I had been successful in League of Legends, and then Danny was like, "You're going to be talented in this for sure," and he's helping me. And so whenever I got into the tables, I was like, I can only crash. If I don't crash, then I'm a disgrace. Basically, that's what I told myself. So whenever I checked the graph, if it was crashing, it was like, yeah, that's what's expected of me, right? So that's it. But then if it was bad, it was really bad for me. Like I would have a mental breakdown at some point. So yeah, I was really results oriented for different reasons that many people, but yeah, it was the same result. I was really bad at managing that. So I didn't check results that often. And I think what really helped for me was realizing at some point that I was making good decisions in general, right? On what stake I was playing, how many tables, how many hours. So it was impossible that if I played a lot and I made good decisions, I was going to have bad results at the end of the month. So there was no point in checking it. And when I realized that, it became really easy for me it was like a click in my head, right? I was checking it every day. And then at some point I clicked and I checked it once a month. And that's it. I still check it once a month nowadays.
The thing which actually helped me, the mental exercise, which really, put my game on another level, is that I would give myself, I would tell myself, okay, I cannot control my results. I cannot control how well I play during today. Like sometimes I would make mistakes. Sometimes, sometimes people would play better than me. Sometimes I'm gonna get outplayed. That's just inevitable. So for me, I thought, okay, so today when I'm gonna start playing, my goal is that if I'm gonna make some stupid mistake, something really dumb, my point is to look at it, breathe it in and not get angry. Like not feel anything. That's my goal. To make as many dumb mistakes as possible. And if I make a lot of dumb mistakes and I would not feel any negative emotions or very little negative emotions, that's a great session. If I played very well and I made one dumb mistake and got angry, then that's a bad session, basically. And then I had one session where I played horribly, but I would control my emotions very well. I would laugh it off. And then I stood up and like, wow, today I lost like $20,000 and I feel amazing. I don't feel it. And after that,
context that sounds crazy. By the way, like if you tell that to someone that's playing low stakes or not playing poker, that sounds like you're crazy.
Yes, but like you already at this level, you have confidence in your results because even if all of a sudden you start playing badly, you know that you've been successful for so long. You know that you're working every day, you're working on your health, you're studying, and you're playing versus fish. Like it's not like you're Reg Warren, so it's impossible for you to be losing in the long run. Like you might not be winning as much, right? But you're not losing. Like that's just out of the question. So and after that, I would just focus on. I wouldn't care about my results, and I mean, try not to care. Of course, I would care at some level, but I would make a mental game where I would play like I make a super dumb mistake, and it was actually funny that. I would try to, not feel it or watch myself, and meditation would really help with that. And after that, by the way, like right now, I actually prefer playing to studying. If I can get a choice, I think I enjoy playing more. And before it was like never like this. I would always study, but studying for me was like this safe space where you could, hang out with your buddies, or you could, chill, some difficult sport, and then you're figuring it out. Why does he do that? Oh, it's interesting. Maybe I could do this. Maybe it's, you're trying to figure it out. And it's a, no safe environment. And it's like an interesting mental puzzle for you, which you're solving, which is cool, right? You enjoy it. Yeah. And, but for poker, because of stress, I didn't enjoy it much, but now I think I enjoy it because there is no stress. I mean, not no stress, but the stress which kind of excites you. There is no like the stress which would give you depression, or where you would become gun shy, right? You would be fear to start playing. Okay, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about so
Yeah.
what happened after? Yeah.
Yeah, I will finish quickly because I'm
Yeah.
seeing that we have to go to the video. But yeah, I will answer. This guy asked me how do I feel about living in Spain, and I will explain that I moved to Bali this year and what happened. So I like Spain. Spain is great. The weather is great. People are great. Food is great. Everything is good, but taxes are terrible. And actually, it's not only that you have to pay a lot of taxes if you don't want to, do something illegal. It's also the fact that even if you pay taxes, you don't have any services because you are not actually working in a real job, according to them. So basically, you are donating almost half the money that you make here, and you don't
Yeah.
get anything back from the government. So, this is the situation that we have in Spain. So most people opt to move out of Spain. And, I was no different. I have a few friends in Bali, and they told me that they had been living there for a year. Why not go with them? So I said, yeah, sure. I moved to Bali this year in February, and Bali is great in most things. Everything is super cool for tourists and expats. So people that come from outside, they have a wonderful life if you have money, and you don't even need that much money because it's Asia and it's cheap. It's much more expensive than it used to be, but it's still like for like $3,000 a month, for example, you can live the way you live in Spain with like $10,000 or $12,000. So you live like a super super rich person with a good salary, just an average good salary. And so yeah, life in Bali was great. It was not difficult at all to adapt. I had friends there before I moved there, so I was not alone. I moved with my girlfriend, and at some point in Bali, I was considering staying there for a very long time. Right, I was thinking of moving there, not permanently, but maybe like 5 years or something like that, making living there for a while. And there's a lot of businesses like construction. Everyone is building villas nowadays. Making a coffee shop is like it's so cheap. It's like laughable because salaries are so low that you can just hire 20 people for almost no money and have it run itself. So everything was looking great, and then at some point, I think in June, beginning of June, end of May, I got really sick with something that I couldn't find what it was. I ate something that felt disgusting when I was eating it. I was eating every day in the same place, super healthy, super clean. Still, it's Bali, it's Indonesia, and you cannot trust anything. And I ate something that was disgusting. The next day, I woke up with a bump in my tongue. My tongue was like super inflamed, okay, and I had like different like bumps in like my base of the tongue, top of the tongue. So I go to a doctor, and they're like, no, this is just an inflammation. Take
Could you
something.
talk? Could you talk with your
Yeah,
tongue?
I could. Yeah, I could talk. It was not like I was like out of breath or anything, but it was like you know when you have this feeling when you focus on the fact that you have a tongue and you feel like uncomfortable that you have something inside of your mouth that is taking.
It's like
It was
it's
that,
uh-huh.
but always.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when
Yeah.
you get your tooth pulled out and your tongue is always in this hole inside.
Yes.
You cannot stop thinking about it because there is something new inside your
Yes.
tongue, right? So this feeling. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I went to a doctor and he was like, "Yeah, anti-inflammatory drugs." Right? I took them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the inflammation went down and I was feeling better. So after I finished my my period of 1 week of anti-inflammatories, it gets swollen again, the same thing. And I actually start developing some symptoms that whenever I eat certain foods, which I always ate the same things. So whenever I ate, my avocado or my eggs or my chicken or most things would give me some allergy reaction. So what would happen is I would start getting really hot and sweating. And at night, around like 9 p.m. or something, I would start getting anxious. And by the time I went to sleep, I was having like full blown panic attacks every day and I couldn't sleep. So for like 2 weeks, I started going to doctors. They don't find anything. They try different drugs. They try antibiotics. They try everything. Nothing works. And I'm sleeping like on average 2 hours a day or something like that. Full panic attacks every single day after 9 p.m. Life is miserable. I stopped grinding, obviously. And I have some procedure done to where they put a camera inside my mouth and they check my stomach and everything, and they see everything is like screwed, like everything is like completely burnt from my stomach acids, and they don't know the cause, but they give me a medicine that is anti-acid for the stomach. Helps a little bit. I get a little bit better, but after 1 month, it stops helping. I start getting worse again, even through the medication, and I decided to come back to Spain, okay, because doctors in Bali are awful, okay, so like doctor in Bali is super underprepared. There are good ones, obviously, if you're willing to go to like the best doctors in the main city, but also in Spain, and it's free. So I want more money. I was scared for my life, and I came back to Spain. And after a lot of doctors and a lot of like different tests, I think I got drawn blood like 20 times in 1 month or something, which I'm not sure how healthy it is, by the way. Uh, they found that I had some parasites, some like worms or something. I'm not sure what it was, and they gave me medication for it. And I actually recently started getting better. I think like a few weeks ago, I started recovering from it, and many of the symptoms are not there anymore, but some have stayed. So I'm not done with doctors. I still have to go to doctors and see why my tongue is still inflamed after getting rid of the parasites. Most foods I'm still allergic to, even though some of them I can eat now. And my life now is like, okay, I can do normal life. I think I lost like 20 kilos. I was 80 kilos and I'm 178. So now I'm 60 kilos, 178, which is very thin.
Wow.
And obviously, not, no one can prepare you for this, right? So you're there grinding and having a wonderful life in Bali, and then all of a sudden, the same place that was serving you amazing food, then it serves you food that is killing you, right? And I think what I learned the most about this trip was I'm still not over with my sickness, so I'm sure I will learn more things about it. And it's putting me through some like existential crisis that I'm, starting to think about death and whatnot, which is tough. But at the same time, I learned a lot about being prepared for things that you don't have in your equation, right? I was spending a lot of money in Bali, a lot, maybe like half of what I was making. And now I regret spending so much money because I was making plans for like the next 2 years, thinking, okay, if now I'm making this much money, then by December I will have this much saved. I can buy crypto or an apartment. And then reality is that I spent most of it. Then I haven't been able to grind for 3 or 4 months when I'm still spending a lot of money going to private doctors and whatnot. And if I had made better decisions and I had prepared for these possibilities, I would actually be, much more well off now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this happens a lot to poker players, right? Since money is not easy, but it feels easy to get, it's also easy to spend. I think a lot of poker players make a lot of money and have no money in the bank.
Yeah.
And it's because of this.
I think a lot of the poker players have very poor financial skill. Let's put it at that. But well, man, I don't know what I would do. I've never had anything like that. I mean, I've been sick, but not like this. So maybe you could share some mental tricks which helped you to get through, like where because. I don't know, like if somebody found a sickness and nobody know what it is, like is at least the cause, like they assure this is parasite or it's like a multiple problems.
Yeah. So what the doctor? So I went to a specialist in tropical diseases, which I mean he's probably the most qualified person to know about these things. And he told me that most likely what happened is I had parasites or some kind of bacteria, got rid of it, but because it was so aggressive to my body, now the body can develop like autoimmune diseases, things like irritable bowel syndrome, which is very common, or Crohn's disease, and a lot of issues actually start because of something else. Like you get attacked so hard by something that now it's like in a perpetual state of irritation where
Yeah.
anything now can irritate it and give you symptoms even though you don't have what actually caused it in the beginning. So now we're starting to investigate with my doctor through colonoscopies and things like that, which I will actually start next week. What are the sequels to the disease, right? What's the aftermath? And I'm preparing mentally for really bad news of having to deal with it for the rest of my life. Actually, he said it's possible. He said maybe it's he doesn't know if it's likely or not, but he doesn't know anything until he actually starts investigating inside of my body. So it's tough mentally. What I tried to do throughout this process, I was always talking with my psychologist because I think it's an important thing to have in these moments. Is I try to have perspective and think of other people that actually have it worse. At the end of the day, I don't have my panic attacks and my sleeping problems anymore. So I can't sleep, right? I am peaceful, kind of. I'm mostly peaceful. I can walk. I can go to the gym. I can eat some things. My quality of life is decent now. It's actually average, probably. So I have to think of people that have it worse, right? Rare diseases that kill them, people that are in a wheelchair, things like that help me cope with it. It sounds dumb, maybe, but it helps me think that I don't have it that bad, and I actually have been lucky for most of my life for not having any issues before, and I am very grateful that our job is something that we can do through these times, right? I'm
Yeah.
feeling sick. I can still grind. I can grind from my house. I don't have to go anywhere physically. I don't need a super healthy physical state to perform at a decent level. Right? Obviously, I'm not going to be competitive playing 500s against the people that are super fit, but maybe I can play 50s and still make a really good salary, put in low hours. Right? I'm my own boss. I can still, choose what to do with my job. So I think in the end, when you have to go through something really tough, accepting it is really important. Okay, this is me now. I have a disease. I'm unlucky, but I'm not that unlucky, and I still have some good things going for me in my life that make up for it mostly. So that's how I think about it. That's it. And I'm actually not thinking about death that much now. That was very tough in the beginning when I was thinking that I could die, because the panic attacks made everything so much worse, right? While you are in a panic attack, nothing is rational. So any little symptom that you have, you start thinking of, like, I have this disease that's going to kill me. I have this that's I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And now that I don't have that, I value how important mental health is, and I think that my mental health is good, and I'm grateful for that. And physical health, as long as you can, do a normal life, you're set.
Could
Mental health, on the other side, you have to work a lot on it. Yeah.
could you describe a panic attack, like, because I've never had one, like, and what so is it
Yeah.
like, could you mentally stop it, or it's more physical, or
No.
no? No.
No, so it's both. It's both. So the heart starts racing, and basically it's like beating really fast, like you're sprinting. Yeah, and you're not doing anything. You're laying on your bed. So any noise, anything, any light that moves, even the sound of the wind, everything scares you. It's like you're in a very threatening place, even though you aren't. Right, where you should feel safe in your house, you don't feel safe at all. And every little like thing that you think that makes it to where you're more anxious actually makes your heart go faster, and then you're more anxious. So it's like you start breathing through your mouth. It's a panic attack, basically. It's like it's super irrational, and you cannot think about anything positive. And I remember at the time my tongue would feel bigger. I would start feeling that any little symptom, I would have some acid reflux, and I would think, oh, it's burning my throat, it's gonna break, and I will bleed out, and it's something completely irrational. I cannot explain it, and it would go on for hours actually, and I couldn't sleep. And then eventually, when it became daylight again, I would like calm down and start sleeping a little bit for a couple hours. But yeah, I would wake up sweating in the middle of the night from nightmares every single day. It was terrible. It was terrible.
Were you at some point afraid to go to sleep because of it?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was afraid of eating first because it was giving me the allergy reaction that was causing the panic attacks, and it was a mental tax to eat. So I would start not eating basically for a long time. I would not eat anything, just drink some water, and I started losing weight really quick. And then the doctors were like, "You have to eat something or you will die." And then I was, yes, but if I eat, then I will feel like I will die, which is worse than dying itself. And yeah, it was a struggle for some time, but yeah, 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 yeah. I started fearing eating and going to bed to where I would start not sleeping. I would spend all night awake, and then I would try to have a nap during the day, and that's it. The less that I slept, the better that I felt, because I didn't have the nightmares and panic attacks, but also the worst that I would feel during the day because I was super tired from not eating and not sleeping. So it was mentally challenging. So I was at some point I was like, I cannot stay in Bali. I'm going to Spain, and I want to fix it quickly. And it still took over 2 months to actually get to the root cause of it and starting feeling better. But now I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling good compared to what I was feeling. I'm feeling good. So yeah,
N-
probably
n-
made me tougher now.
Yeah, now you should definitely not be scared of making a bad call.
No, yeah. I'm like a kamikaze, you know, like I'm not scared of poker at all. Yeah.
Yeah, because the worst which could happen is you lose money, and after that, like,
I don't care.
I don't
Yeah.
care. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, uh, hopefully, I mean, I've never experienced. I've been lucky. I've had some problems, but I've never experienced anything like that before. And I don't know. Even if I get a little bit sick, I'm usually turned like into a big baby. So I can't imagine like how.
Me too.
Yeah. How.
Me too. But when it's real, you know, you feel the same. You know, like you're a little baby and you're sick and you want to be with your friends and your family. And this time it was just that it was worse, and that's it. It actually didn't feel that much different to when you have other disease until I started having the panic attacks, like 15 days in or 20. I started fearing for my life, and that's when it changed everything. But I think looking back, it wasn't that bad, you know, because I actually didn't die and I suffered a lot mentally, but eventually it passes like every disease. And that's why I think we're lucky, right? Like some people have diseases that don't pass and ours have passed. So that's how I cope with it, basically. It's like even at my worst, it wasn't still that bad. And now I've gotten stronger. I think I will become a better poker player because of it, because I wasn't it, and now I'm not scared, or not that scared, I guess. And of course, it's gonna set my career back a few months. And now that I've come back to poker, I feel that I'm not that in shape compared to how I was when I was playing 100s a few months ago. But hopefully, it's for the better in the future. That's how I like to think about things. You know, with optimism.
Yes.
Something good has to come out of it, for sure.
Yes, I think it's a healthy way to think about it. Yeah, I remember when I was like in Odessa, like before the war, where I stayed. I was big into running at some point, and I would go for a run for like every day for like 10 kilometers or something. And like when I was trying to get in shape, and it was a good way to burn some calories. And at some point, I would have this shooting pain in my left knee, and I would have to stop.
Yes.
And I would go to the doctor, and he would say that, you know, like, yeah, I have a bad knee. And I would ask him, okay, so how do I fix it? And he said, well, it's impossible to fix it. Like it never fixed. So, and I'm like, what do you do? Well, you live with it, and after 10 years, we're gonna, you know, like give you a new ankle, basically. You know, like give you an operation and remove this ankle and put a new one. And I'm like, yeah, that's good news. And we're gonna like, yeah. And what if I feel pain? Well, there are painkillers, so should be okay. Yeah, I mean, I stopped running. Yeah. So yeah, that's life. Okay, on this positive note, let's get into something we both enjoy. Okay, to answer the question, Max Landa, what do you think is the best way to study with the solver? Mark and review hands, play with the trainer, or watch specific sports or something else? Okay, so first of all, you need to understand that the strategies which solver gives you, no human alive would never repeat. Not even close. Like the strategy is insanely difficult. Like it's easy enough to understand what he's trying to accomplish. Like why he uses a polarized range, why he uses like a linear range, a big overbet, a linear block. Like you could kind of make sense of most of it, yeah. But then the frequencies are very important, like extremely important. Because without the frequencies, like it for solver, it would be better if you use just one size in with perfect frequencies than if you use like 10 different sizes but with wrong frequencies, right? So for you, it's really important to understand the logic behind the solver. That's what you need to study. So you need to understand why he does what he does, basically. I think GTO Wizard actually has some pretty GTO base as well, but GTO Wizard lately has produced a lot of content where you could use watch videos which explains rather well like the basics. And what you need to do is you need to understand these basics, and then you need to apply them into your game. So you need to basically build a solver in your head. And during the game, you need to calculate like, okay, what's the best way to play here? Because just memorizing strategy, like basically like if you're playing against solver and trying to copy what he does, this is like the worst way to study, because you're basically trying to mimic something. Like imagine that there's like a famous scientist or something, yeah, and you're trying to mimic him by, you know, putting a white coat, by wearing glasses, by, you know, like putting, I don't know, like you're not actually, you know, you're dressing like a scientist, but you're not a scientist. You're just trying to mimic as one. So same with solver, like you uses his sizes, but your frequencies are on. You misplay, like you understand how spots are on, so it's gonna be a lot worse. It's best to use a much simpler strategy, but you understand what exactly you're doing and why you're doing it. What do you think of multi-sizes on the flopic praxis? I think you can do it, like you can do it rather well. Again, exploitatively you can do it rather well, but again, I'm a big proponent of simplifying the game as much as possible. Because again, you are much dumber than you think, like much dumber, and you have to have extremely good memory and I don't know, very good range awareness to be able to copy the solver as it is. So if you don't use, like, again, you have to have like a couple of good strategies kind of memorized, like the idea, like what exactly is going on here. I mean, I could talk about this for hours actually, but I mean, if I had to answer, like that's the gist of it, because I was about to go into different types of strategies and shit like this, but I mean, let's get into the video.